This video is sponsored by Audible. For a free audiobook, use the link in the description below. Welcome to part 15 of the series where I'm tier ranking all 256 Twinborn combinations from Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn series. We're almost finished with the series, only one more video after this one. As usual, some of these Twinborn names come from the Mistborn adventure game rulebook, but a lot of them were created by myself and other users in the Exploring the Cosmere Discord server. The first Twinborn type we have for this part is Monument. Monuments can use their allomantic bend alloy to speed up time in a bubble around themselves, and they can use their ferrochemical aluminum to store identity. The name Monument comes from the Mistborn adventure game rulebook, and they have the reputation of being able to flip from dull to magnetic instantly. That's an interesting reputation. I don't think it's accurate. So I believe that that reputation is playing on the fact that most people in Era 2 of Scadrial would probably think that ferrochemical aluminum would allow the Monument Twinborn to store that identity and make themselves less noticeable, and then they could later tap that identity to become more noticeable, but that's not actually how ferrochemical aluminum works. That would be how ferrochemical duralumin works, which lets you store connection. But either way, let's see, do these two powers have any synergy? So being able to speed up time in a bubble around yourself, I don't think storing your identity at the same time would do anything. Nothing that I can think of anyways. We don't know a lot about ferrochemical aluminum though, to be fair. Maybe we'll learn more about it in future books, and then we'll be able to decide that it is beneficial to allomantic bend alloy. But for now, it doesn't look like they have much synergy at all. Yeah, I don't think this is a good combination. I'm putting it in C tier. Next up, we have Serenity. Serenity Twinborn can use their allomantic brass to soothe the emotions of others, and they can use their ferrochemical steel to store physical weight. I mean, allomantic brass is very good on its own. It basically lets you control a social situation. I just realized I actually, have this one wrong. Ferrochemical steel doesn't store physical weight, it stores physical speed. I'll fix that after the video for the card. Whenever you're storing your physical speed, you're gonna feel like you're moving through molasses, and your breathing is even gonna feel labored. But then you can tap that physical speed that you store up at a later time to move extraordinarily fast. We see Sazed use it in Era 1 to cover a huge amount of distance in a matter of a few days. I think it's like 2 weeks of travel time in a few days, if I remember correctly. And then in Era 2, we see Bleeder use ferrochemical steel to move so fast that the only way that Wayne and Wax are able to track her movements are when they're within Wayne's speed bubble. They're both very good powers on their own, but they don't have much synergy. I'm gonna put Serenity in A tier. Next up, we have Charmed. Charmed Twinborn can use their allomantic electrum to reveal their future, and they can use their ferrochemical chromium to store fortune. The name Charmed comes from the Mistborn adventure game rulebook, and they have the reputation of being impossible to ambush and really lucky. Okay, yeah, I mean, I guess they would be really lucky if they stored up a bunch of their fortune and were tapping it, but they could also be extremely unlucky if they are storing their fortune. Allomantic electrum lets you see your immediate future in the form of electrum shadows or an electrum cloud. It's a bunch of different versions of yourself coming from your center of self and doing different acts around you. It's not very useful. The only use that it really had was in Era 1 when you were fighting somebody that was burning atium, because burning electrum would throw off the atium shadows. Now, maybe if you're actively tapping your fortune while you burn your electrum, you might see some shadows that give you better information than they normally would. Like, let's say that you're in front of a safe and you start tapping your ferrochemical chromium and then burn your allomantic electrum. Maybe you'll be able to see one of your electrum shadows guess the right combination to the safe. That'd be pretty useful. But that's largely speculation. I'm gonna put Charmed in B tier. Next up, we have Bat. Bat Twinborn can use their allomantic bronze to hear allomantic pulses, and they can use their ferrochemical iron to store physical weight. All right, allomantic bronze can be pretty good if you're trying to study different types of investiture, because you'll be able to sense the pulses that kinetic investiture gives off, and they're all different in subtle ways. So if you get really good with allomantic brass, you can differentiate between the different types of magic. And ferrochemical iron, whenever you're storing your weight, you're going to be very light. You'd be much easier to push over, push around, all that. It also lets you fall from great heights and land safely. We see Sazed do this in Era 1. And then you could tap that weight at a later time and become very heavy. We see Wax in Era 2 become heavier than a building. I believe that's how it's described. And he crashes through a ceiling that way. I don't see these powers synergizing though. Bat is also going in B tier for me. Next we have Caterpillar. Caterpillar Twinborn can use their Allomantic Duralumin to enhance the current metal that they're burning, and they can use their ferrochemical bend alloy to store energy in the form of calories or liquid. Since Allomantic Duralumin is the Caterpillar's only allomantic ability, it's useless to them because they can't burn any other metals, so burning their Duralumin does nothing. This is a Nat of the Twinborn world, and I'm going to put it in D tier. Next up we have Smolder. Smolder Twinborn can use their allomantic cadmium to slow down time in a bubble around themselves, and they can use their ferrochemical brass to store warmth. I think that these two powers could have pretty good synergy in a very niche circumstance. Let's say that the Smolder is a hiker and they're out in the wilderness and they break a leg, for instance, and they're able to notify help to come to their rescue, but it's gonna take a while. Maybe a day, maybe longer. Well, the Smolder could throw up their allomantic cadmium bubble and tap their ferrochemical warmth to stay warm, or store their warmth if it's hot out and cool themselves down. And then time would pass rapidly from their perspective outside of that cadmium bubble, and it would seem like the help got there much sooner than it would if they were just in normal time. So I think Smolder could be a good survivalist type maybe. Let me know in the comments if you could think of any other good uses for these two powers together. Smolder's going B tier for me. Next up we have Grub. Grubs can use their allomantic aluminum to wipe the internal allomantic reserves of themselves, and they can use their ferrochemical bend alloy to store energy. Once again, that energy is in the form of calories or fluids. But allomantic aluminum isn't great whenever that's your only allomantic ability, because it wipes internal allomantic reserves, but since you can't burn any other allomantic metals, you're probably not going to be consuming other types of allomantic metals. It does have use in some niche circumstances. If investiture is being used on you, like a lashing from a Knight's Radiant, then you should be able to burn your allomantic aluminum and get rid of that lashing. So if the Grub was a world hopper, it could potentially have some good use for them. But most of the time, if they're just on Scadrial especially, and if they're just a normal person, it's pretty useless. I'm putting it in D tier. Next up we have Merc. Merc Twinborn can use their allomantic copper to hide allomantic pulses, and they can use their ferrochemical cadmium to store breath. I don't think this is a good combination at all. I mean, ferrochemical cadmium can be useful if you're using it to basically do blood doping and highly oxygenate your blood. Or if it was the space age of the Cosmere, they could go into outer space potentially, and they wouldn't have to worry about breathing, although they might have to worry about burning to death with all the radiation out there. For me, Merc is going C tier. Next up we have Stoker. Stoker Twinborn can use their allomantic zinc to riot the emotions of others, and they can use their ferrochemical brass to store warmth. Allomantic zinc is very good on its own, but it doesn't really do anything when you combine it with ferrochemical brass. Ferrochemical brass is good for comfort, so the Stoker could be in a hot environment and just be actively storing their warmth and feel cool, or they could be in a very cold, frigid environment and tap any warmth they have saved up and they wouldn't feel the cold. I don't think I can put Stoker any higher than B tier. Next up we have Foresight. Foresight Twinborn can use their allomantic electrum to reveal their future, and they can use their ferrochemical copper to store memories. The name Foresight comes from the Mistborn adventure game rulebook, and they have the reputation of having an infallible memory of the future. Interesting. So, I mean, yeah, I guess they could just be storing all of the different possibilities that their Electrum shadows are showing them in their copper mind, but Electrum only shows you the immediate future. It's like, I don't know, 5 to 10 seconds, maybe even less than that. So I don't know how useful that would be. Yeah, I don't really see it being a good combination. For me, this is a C tier combination. Next up, we have Cricket. Cricket Twinborn can use their allomantic duralumin to enhance their current metal being burned. And I have a typo on this. I'll have to fix this card too. Great. And they can use their ferrochemical chromium to store fortune. Allomantic duralumin is useless to the Cricket Twinborn because they can't burn any other allomantic metals. So this is going in D tier for me. Then we have Introspect. Introspect Twinborn can use their allomantic gold to reveal their past self, and they can use their ferrochemical electrum to store determination. The name Introspect comes from the Mistborn adventure game rulebook, and they have the reputation of analyzing every detail of their lives. That is interesting. I don't really understand that reputation. I mean, yeah, I guess they would just observe their gold shadows. Whenever they burn gold, they produce a gold shadow that shows a different version of themselves that could have been if they had made different choices in their past. Maybe storing your determination or tapping your determination could make those gold shadows show you something different. I don't really see it being useful. Every time that we've seen Allomantic gold used, it's been described as a surreal experience. Introspect is not a good combination in my opinion. I'm putting it in C tier. Next we have Butterfly. Butterfly Twinborn can use their Allomantic aluminum to wipe the internal Allomantic reserves within themselves, and they can use their ferrochemical tin to store senses. Since their Allomantic aluminum is largely useless to them, I'm going to put it in D tier. Next up we have Essence. Essence Twinborn can use their Allomantic nigrosyl to enhance the Allomantic burn of a target, and they can use their ferrochemical aluminum to store identity. So when you burn Allomantic nigrosyl, you have to be physically touching another Allomancer, and if that other Allomancer is using their allomancy, all of those allomantic reserves that within themselves that they're burning will be used up in an instant. They'll use all that power at once. Allomantic nigrosyl can be used to boost the allomancy of teammates on a team of allomancers, so it could be really good for a support type of Twinborn. And it could also be used offensively. You could sneak up on another allomancer and give them a nitro burst and potentially blind them if they're burning something like tin. And then ferrochemical aluminum, in my opinion, is pretty useless on its own. Yeah, Essence is going C tier for me. Next up we have Cloudtoucher. Cloudtoucher Twinborn can use their allomantic steel to push metals, and they can use their ferrochemical cadmium to store breath. The name Cloudtoucher comes from the Mistborn adventure game rulebook, and they have the reputation of soaring to heights that no others can reach. Interesting. So they would have to be very, very strong allomancers to be able to push themselves up high enough to actually need to use their stored breath. I mean, in Era 1, we did see Vin use a Duralumin enhanced steel push to shoot herself out of Luthadel towards Strath Venture, and that's whenever she cut him and his horse in half with I think she was using a Koloss blade, if I remember correctly. So, I mean, you can launch yourself really far, but I still don't think it would be high enough to need to use your stored breath. I do think this combination could be pretty good, though, for combat situations specifically. You could use your cadmium mine to highly oxygenate your blood, which would increase your stamina and make you more athletic, so you could be better in a fight. And I think allomantic steel is almost made for combat purposes, since you can shoot pieces of metal at your enemies. I think Cloudtoucher is good enough to go in A tier for me. And the last Twinborn combination for this part is Catcher. Catchers can use their allomantic tin to increase senses, and they can use their ferrochemical steel to store physical speed. The name Catcher comes from the Mistborn adventure game rulebook, and they have the reputation of no one can escape their sight or speed. I think Catcher is a pretty good combination. Allomantic tin is really good. It increases all of your senses at once, and then ferrochemical steel lets you run extremely quickly. In Era 1, it seems to just make you extremely athletic almost, but then in Era 2 with Bleeder, we see that it actually dilates time essentially for the person tapping steel. So I don't know if Bleeder was just tapping a lot more speed than Sazed was in Era 1, or maybe it was kind of a retcon in a way to make ferrochemical steel a little more OP than it was in Era 1. I think this is a good combination. I think it's even good enough to go into S tier for me. All right, so there is my final tier ranking for part 15. I'll get all the typos that I found on these cards fixed before I post them for the patrons. So if you're a patron at the Arcanist tier or higher, you'll be able to access these cards without the typos. And here is the combined tier list of all the parts of the series so far, parts 1 through 15. Remember guys, we only have one part left in this series, and in that final part I will revisit the compounder types, add them to this final tier list, and then rearrange this tier list as needed to get my final tier ranking. Be sure to get the free audiobook that the sponsor of today's video, Audible, is offering. All you have to do is use the link in the description below and sign up for an Audible Premium Plus 30-day free trial. After you sign up, Audible will give you a credit, and you can use this credit to get any audiobook you want absolutely free. Being an Audible member also gives you access to thousands of other audiobooks and podcasts in the Audible Plus catalog. So be sure to claim your free audiobook today by using the link below. That's it for this video, guys. I'll see you in part 16.